Hello Internet, KTChamberlain here. When I announced that the reboot to History of Super Mario Bros. Was cancelled, I did mention that I would still be doing some videos talking about the web show. So I figured I'd make good on that by talking about something I'd been toying with for years. Talking about how well Super Mario Bros. Told its story through action. Used properly, fight scenes can really enhance any story they are a part of. And this is especially true in the first 3 seasons of Super Mario Bros. For those new to this channel, Super Mario Bros. Was the web series created by Rich Alvarez, Chris Muller, and Matt Provenzel. It told the story of purportedly teenage Mario and Luigi living in the real world in a mostly episodic fashion, refusing to go back to the Mushroom Kingdom, all the while familiar video game characters interact with them, coupled with original villains. Anyway, the conflict in Season 1 stems around the Mario Brothers refusing to go back to the Mushroom Kingdom, all the while Bowser tries to get them to come back through his top henchman Wario. In Episode 4, Waluigi is introduced, and this leads to the season's first fight in Episode 5. While this fight may not seem like much, what really sells it is the use of Mario games sound effects for every punch, kick, slap, and so on. I especially love the use of one for Wario's glove slap. The stakes for this fight are simple. Mario and Luigi don't want to go back to the Mushroom Kingdom and repeat yet another Rescue Princess Peach bit. Wario and Waluigi want them to go back because Bowser will pay them handsomely if they do. What I like about this fight is that Mario and Luigi don't just simply fight their counterparts. Sometimes they'll switch it up and Mario will fight Waluigi and Luigi will take on Wario. Other times, Mario and Luigi will try out-of-the-box moves. A move like this, silly though it is, symbolizes how they're stronger when united, whereas Wario and Waluigi, while united by a common goal, have an underlying wedge between them in the form of Wario's animosity/jealousy toward the idea of having a partner, coupled with Waluigi's overconfidence in himself. This fight also does a good job in conveying to us, the audience, who's stronger at this point in the story, and it has good payoff. How do you resolve a fight like this? Simple. It comes down to fireballs. Even Luigi himself comments, "Ooh, that time already," as Mario prepares a fireball. It's Luigi's way of metaphorically saying, "It's time to take off the white gloves," which coincidentally was a saying coined in Italy, and the Mario brothers are canonically Italian, and they wear white gloves. The first fireball takes out Wario, Waluigi insults him and takes out Luigi with a fireball of his own. Mario wisely pulls out all the stops and makes a second fireball much bigger and takes out Waluigi, and the fight is over. Right away, this fight scene furthered the story, showing us Mario and Luigi's strengths while highlighting Wario and Waluigi's weaknesses, and planted the seeds that will come to fruition later on. In classic storytelling fashion, Wario and Waluigi swear that they'll be back and vow a rematch. Normally it would be pragmatic to at least shadow a fleeing enemy, but in this case Mario and Luigi were fighting defensively, and they stressed that they just want to be left alone to their own devices. Giving chase would contradict their narrative. Best to just take the win and let Donkey Kong give chase. Albeit in 2 later episodes, but still. Plus, in a way, they do see this as all fun and games at this time, so of course they think, let him go, enough for one day. Anyway, that was the first fight in Season 1. So how does the rematch handle 10 episodes later? It builds up with higher stakes, and it hits the ground running with fireballs and fists. Unlike the fight in Episode 5, the Mario game's sound effects are dropped due to a shift in tone, but it works fine here. And where the first fight had 2 phases, this fight has 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 is the rematch between the Mario and Wario brothers. It ends when Wario and Waluigi combine their energy into a big fireball, and it takes Luigi out of the fight. My only nitpick in this otherwise well-crafted fight is that I feel that their combined fireball should have been intended for Mario in an attempt to gain a decisive win, with a literal big one-shot move, but Luigi takes one for the team, pulling the rug out from under their feet. If they took out Mario, Luigi would have no choice but to surrender and go quietly with him, since he's obviously not as strong. If Luigi took one for the team, it'd also be a good way to show that even he can confound his enemies. That's what happens when you underestimate an adorable coward like Luigi. As Phase 2 approaches, the odds are stacked against Mario with 2 against 1, suddenly becoming 3 against 1 when the FedEx guy from Episode 13 joins Wario and Waluigi in the fight. Suddenly, Ash Ketchum joins Mario's side, and then a moment later, Donkey Kong joins Mario's side. And I love Wario's reaction then as now.
Oh crap.
Now that the scales are leveled and it's on like Donkey Kong, we now move on to Phase 2 of the fight. Super Smash Bros. Brawl came out a few months prior to this episode, so the opening soundtrack was fresh in our minds, and Richie put it to good use here. After some good action and humor, Ash is knocked out by Waluigi, Waluigi gets knocked out by Donkey Kong, and surprisingly the FedEx guy knocks out Donkey Kong, only to be knocked out by the UPS men, ending Phase 2 of the fight. Normally this would be an out-of-left-field move, but it fits the tone of Season 1, and they did establish the rivalry between the two, and the UPS guy is the kind of guy who comes and goes like a very brief cameo. So now it's down to Mario and Wario. As Phase 3 approaches, we have a bit of a dialogue exchange before we kick off Phase 3 with something unexpected, yet totally awesome. Lightsabers. I remember at the time, there were some who thought it didn't make sense, but the show did make it clear that it's video game characters and logistics in the real world, so that, coupled with lightsabers existing in the Super Smash Bros. Games in the form of beam swords, was not a stretch in the slightest. Even when I was a kid playing the first two Super Smash Bros. Games with my brother, we called beam swords lightsabers all the time like it was nothing. The fight built up to this, and it's come to the lightsabers. After some back and forth, Mario is disarmed and on the ground, just when it looks like Wario's won. Peach knocks him out with her umbrella, thus ending the fight in Season 1, Episode 15. Like the previous fight, Episode 15's fight also furthers the story in its action, all the while surpassing its predecessor in size and scope. So how does the next major fight further its story? Well, the fight against Nox Decius in Episode 25 does a lot of things differently. For one, we have a lot of heroes present: Mario, Luigi, Peach, Donkey Kong, Link, and Brock. Ness would have been present, but he subverted our expectations, basically saying, "I'm too young for this shit," and Ash would have been present, but we learned that he left to try and catch some chicken Pokemon, which is a hilarious in-universe explanation, not that he would have made a difference in the fight. Out of universe, it was because Ash's actor, Dane Kevin Cook, was the primary cameraman at the time, and there was no one else available to film the scene. Remember, it was at this time when Matt Provenzel started playing Donkey Kong when Tim Runyon was no longer available.
Our usual Donkey Kong, Tim Runyon, couldn't show up today, so Matthew Thomas Provenzel, who usually plays Wario, is playing Donkey Kong this evening.
Yes, so Donkey Kong shrunk from 6 feet to 5'9". This is gonna piss off the stock market.
Oh, sure, gorilla!
Anyway, Nox Decius reveals himself, and the looks on everyone's faces, coupled with the music, help to hype him up as a villain. Luigi makes a rash move in taking the first shot, only for it to be redirected and knock him out. I get why Luigi was taken out of the fight. It was so that his actor Chris Moeller could properly change out of the costume and then change into the Decius costume to play for the fight scene, but I really wish that Luigi's fireball was much bigger, attributing to knocking him out. But still. So Mario and the others charge. Decius is able to block Mario's punches with ease, same with Link's Master Sword, Brock's Pokeball, Peach's Umbrella, and Mario's Fireballs. He even beats Link in a round of energy tennis like an Ocarina of Time. Maybe Link should have started with an empty bottle. Despite Peach's Umbrella withstanding Decius' energy balls, he manages to take her out when she's the last one standing. So this fight shows us how powerful and badass Nox Decius is as a villain, and his badassery heightens even more when he reveals that Bowser and Ganondorf are actually working for him. Decius disappears, and the heroes have to regroup. I would cover the lightsaber duel between Luigi and Waluigi in episode 29, but all it conveys are two things. One, Waluigi no longer works with Wario for reasons we'll get into later, and two, Luigi has a lightsaber too, and has made some improvements since episode 25. There's a strong argument to be made that this fight scene could have been cut out and you missed nothing, but then again, one could make an argument in its favor, so I guess it's a moot point. Fast forward to episode 30, the season finale to season 2. Mario has acquired the Nether Emblems, 3 objects that will kill Decius when combined. Mario goes off to face him alone in an apple orchard. Tension builds up. Decius could be anywhere. He surprises Mario, and just as he tries to put the Nether Saber together, Decius kicks it out of his hand. Why Mario didn't assemble it sooner is never explained, but I imagine he thought it had to be assembled in close proximity first, kind of like being in range for a remote control to work on a TV. So now Season 2's final fight is also in 3 phases. However, where Episode 15 built up to the lightsabers in Phase 3, Episode 30 brilliantly does this in reverse. In both cases, it made sense why lightsabers were used when they were used. In episode 15, it was a way of saying, time to take off the white gloves. In episode 30, this was a way of saying, let's skip the warm-up, shall we? But it was also a very genius way of subverting expectations. At the time this episode came out, many, including myself, thought Richie was going to unleash the lightsabers in Phase 3 of the fight. But no, he went right for it, which makes sense in universe. Even though Mario lost the Nether Saber, he still uses his own as a way to wear down and weaken Decius in the hopes of retrieving the Nether Saber to finish the job. Decius' lightsaber also had our attention, being a lightsaber with a black core and a red glow. Mario manages to destroy Decius' lightsaber by going for the hilt. However, it's a short-lived victory because Decius destroys Mario's lightsaber, leveling the playing field and ending Phase 1 of the fight. As we segue into Phase 2 of the fight, Decius talks a little bit about his backstory and how his brother Merlin burned his face with a lightsaber, and that's why he wears that mask. Rising to his feet, Mario and Decius then enter Phase 2, Fists, i.e. hand-to-hand combat Metal Gear Solid style, which is reinforced by the Metal Gear Solid music playing in the background. The fight is evenly matched, and Mario manages to, presumably, break Decius' arm before it heals on its own. Now we enter Phase 3 of the fight, Fireballs. Mario and Decius hit each other. Their stamina is waning, but Decius fires another fireball, and Mario looks as though he doesn't have the energy to block it or respond in kind, but psych! He uses Yellow Cape to deflect it. It's super effective. This was another move taken from a Super Smash Bros. Game, only this one debuted in Super Smash Bros. Melee, where Mario uses the Yellow Cape from Super Mario World to block and deflect. Sadly, this is the first and only time it's utilized. Regardless, it sends it back to Decius, thus ending the fight. In a fit of anger, he force chokes Mario, making it clear that he's done toying with the plumber, unaware that Wario picks up the Nether emblems and activates the Nether Saber to kill Decius by stabbing him in the back. Mario thinks Wario saved his life, when really, he took a page from Vegeta and says,
Wrong, Mario. I killed him so I could kill you myself.
Which ends the fight on an even bigger cliffhanger than Season 1. The fight in Season 2 did a good job in not only subverting expectations, but also doing so in ways that made sense in universe. Wario killing Decius with the intent to kill Mario made thematic sense, because throughout Seasons 1 and 2, Wario has had some insecurity about being weak and incompetent. It should also be noted that this was payback for Decius' harsh rejection of his offer to join him earlier in Season 2. In Decius' eyes, it was a simple question of, why elevate you when my own underling had already fired you for repeated failures? Killing Decius is Wario's way of saying, you still think I'm too weak? And this will come into play in the next big fight in Season 3. But before we get to that, we need to cover two fights before we get to episode 44, even though it's technically one fight. Immediately at the beginning of Season 3, Wario tries to kill an unarmed and weakened Mario, but the Nether Saber shuts off against his will, allowing Mario to make his escape. Since he had a red lightsaber, one wonders why he didn't simply, switch and give chase. But we'll soon find out why. At the end of episode 35, Mario discovers that he actually has Wario's red lightsaber, much to his confusion. In the next episode, it all starts coming back to Mario. After Wario said, I killed him so that I could kill you myself, something made the orchard appear to lose its leaves like winter, and took possession of Mario, filling him with unbridled rage. It unsettles Wario. Mario force fights Wario's lightsaber, and they do battle. Despite Mario's weakened state, he gives Wario a run for his money. Wario gives a strong force push, which drives whatever took possession of Mario out of his body, and the orchard returns to normal, and the lightsaber hilt Mario had swiped ends up in his back pocket. We learn that when Wario killed Decius, an evil entity called the Darkness left him and took possession of Mario, filling him with unbridled rage. Kind of like when Ryzen possessed Yusuke Urameshi in his fight against Sensui in Yu Yu Hakusho. Anyway, when Wario unknowingly drove the Darkness out with that force push, it later took on the physical appearance of Mario to retrieve the actual lightsaber of Nox Decius, the Black Widow blade. The one that was destroyed in episode 30 was actually a fake, since Decius was toying with Mario. With that out of the way, Wario resumes his original objective and tries to kill Mario with a Nether Saber, only for it to shut off against his will, allowing Mario to make his escape, despite his tired state. So, this well-crafted retcon explains why Wario didn't give chase in the first place. If your weapon suddenly doesn't work and your enemy leaves having swiped your only other weapon that works, it'd be pretty stupid to give chase like that. Besides, Wario saw fit to retrieve the Truth Stone from Nox Decius' corpse, making him invincible. The Nether Saber is a powerful offensive weapon, but with it suddenly powerless, Wario would need a strong defense to compensate until he could regain the offensive. Story-wise, not only was the fight well choreographed, but also well edited and well written. These are the little things that go a long way in storytelling through filmmaking. Anyway, Wario manages to pull off a clever scheme to get the Nether Saber reactivated. Feigning anger, he discards the hilt, knowing that Ash was in the area. Ash takes it to Solid Snake and Otacon, and Mario, via codec, advises them to destroy it since it wouldn't be that hard for Wario to reclaim it, but with him unarmed, they could still take the Truth Stone from him. Snake contacts his master McDonald Miller, who tells him it has to be taken to Merlin's table to be destroyed. Since Ash knows the way, he, Snake, and Otacon set off to Merlin's table. Through a funny fourth wall break, they arrive there faster, and they realize too late that the table actually recharged the saber. Snake discovers that McDonald Miller is actually Wario in disguise, and this was all part of his plan. He ambushes them with a fireball, sends them fleeing, and reclaims a recharged Nether Saber, now having a powerful offense in addition to his best defense. As far as plans go, this was pretty clever. Sure, one could argue that it was putting a lot of eggs into one lightsaber hilt-shaped basket, but that was Wario's decision. He still had the Truth Stone to keep him invincible in the meantime. Wario is often portrayed, especially in this web series, to not be all that smart, or at the very least as a dumb brute, but that might have worked in his favor, making it easier for his enemies to underestimate him, thinking he couldn't pull off such a plan in the first place. I do remember debate was split down the middle whether McDonald Miller was actually Wario in disguise, or if Matt Provenzel was actually playing the character from Metal Gear Solid. This was one of the best perks to having a cast play multiple characters like in a Monty Python film. Aside from that, due to a limited talent pool, with Wario having successfully pulled off this plan, he basically says, "You still think I'm stupid?" For all we know, at least in the case of Super Mario Bros., he could have been pulling a long-term Columbo in the sense of pretending to be stupid, but is actually smart and outfoxing his enemies who underestimate him. In the movie Act 2, he actually does a similar thing with the darkness by playing dead before springing his trap. Whether or not this was Richie's intent is unclear, but it is rather thought-provoking nonetheless. With Wario back to being armed and dangerous, with a powerful offense and defense, Waluigi returns to help train Mario and Luigi for a 3-on-1 fight against Wario. The animosity that had existed between him and Wario came to a head in episode 28, and thus had a falling out. So with a training montage, they take him on in episode 44. With the first season finale fight having laid the groundwork, and the one for season 2 subverted that by doing it in reverse, how does Richie top himself here? Well, a 3-on-1 fight is one way to go about it, coupled with a daunting undertaking since it required a lot of time to work on the visual effects. It took a toll on his health, but sometimes you gotta suffer for your art. Just don't overdo it, and don't do it too often. Anyway, the trio charges at a disgruntled Wario, entering phase 1 of this fight. Wario uses the Force to knock them down. Mario is the first to get back up and fight. Luigi is second to get back up, and it's barely 2v1. Mario bears the brunt of Wario's rage, and is beaten and bloodied something fierce. Luigi comes second, ending phase 1 of the fight. Phase 2 begins when Waluigi rises. As I said before in my History of Super Mario Bros. Review of this season, episode 44 has the fight that really had to happen at some point, and here, it doesn't disappoint. From the look of things, it's implied that Waluigi intentionally used Mario and Luigi as a means to strategically wear down Wario's stamina before taking him on at full strength, all the while possibly observing his fighting style for good measure. The trio may not be able to kill Wario, but that doesn't mean that he can't be weakened due to losing strength and stamina in a fight. Wario may be the one fighting harder, but Waluigi seems to be the one fighting smarter. But will it be enough? Waluigi starts phase 2 off with a round of energy tennis, which is kind of fitting since the character of Waluigi himself did make his debut in Mario Tennis. 15 love goes to Wario, and the two shoot fireballs colliding with each other until it reaches the breaking point, forcing the two to resume their duel with lightsabers. Wario reels back and takes the high ground on the tractor. Waluigi fires a fireball to distract him long enough to also take the high ground, leveling the scales until he forces him off the tractor and tries to inflict a painful blow. Wario gets back up, and in the midst of their lightsaber clashes, Wario really vents his anger at Waluigi as he throws some punches, knees him in the balls, ow, hits him in the back DBZ style, and literally kicks him bloody, ending phase 2. As Phase 2 segues into Phase 3, Waluigi gets back up, and Wario tosses his hat back to him as though to say, "Clean yourself up," in a backhanded, sporting kind of way. Wario relishes this because way back in Season 1, Episode 1, Wario was confident enough to take on both Mario and Luigi, and he felt he didn't need any partner. Despite being fired by Bowser and rejected by Nox Decius, Wario feels that by having killed Decius, outsmarted Solid Snake, Otacon, and Ash, and dealt Mario, Luigi, and Waluigi each a metaphorical bloody nose, he finally made good on that boast. Better late than never, I suppose. The real reason why Wario was overconfident in himself in Episode 1 actually stemmed from a behind-the-scenes dilemma that I honestly didn't know about at the time when I did History of Super Mario Bros. I promise to be brief. You see, according to Richie, Waluigi was originally written to be in the first 3 episodes, with Doug Orfino being cast to play the character, and the costume was made. But Matt Provenzel refused to work with Doug due to the animosity he harbored toward him at the time. Since Matt was the co-creator of the web show, Richie reluctantly wrote Waluigi out for the first 3 episodes, but by the time Episode 4 was about to be filmed, Richie got the two to come together and put aside their differences, at least enough to work together professionally as actors. However, Chris suggests that the sudden rewrite in those episodes might have been due to a last-minute scheduling change on Doug's part that just so happened to work out in Matt's favor. Personally, there's no real reason to suggest that these accounts contradict each other, but then again, it's also possible that one or both might be misremembering to some extent. After all, it was 16 years ago when they filmed the early episodes. With this context in mind, it may well be what attributed to what I would consider to be Matt's greatest performance as Wario.
We could have destroyed the Mario Bros, but you wanted to play soccer. I wanted to ruin their reputation, but you just wanted to steal their instruments. When we should have been planning, you were busy making out with Wild Goomba!
That's Wild Gina to you!
I don't care about you! I don't care about your girlfriend! I don't care about us!
I thought we were supposed to be friends, Wario.
Well, then you thought wrong. Ever since I've been with you, things have gone from bad to worse. I couldn't capture the Mario Bros, I was fired by Bowser, and worst of all, I was rejected by Nox Decius. I hate you!
At any rate, as cool as it would have been to have Waluigi introduced in the beginning, I honestly think it works out better this way. After all, in the games, Waluigi was introduced a couple games after Wario made his debut, so it felt true to the video games. It also added an extra layer to Wario's character growth, as well as Matt's performance. With that little behind-the-scenes tidbit out of the way, let's get back to Episode 44's fight. Phase 3 begins when Mario and Luigi recover just enough to rejoin Waluigi. While all three may not be at full strength or health, their combined efforts are just enough to subdue a weakened Wario. Despite being down, Wario has some fight left in him until Waluigi talks him down, relaying a revelation from Merlin himself, thus ending the fight, since Wario lets go of his anger and greed that had consumed him since Season 1. Holy cow, this was quite a fight. As I said with the previous fights, this one also furthered the storytelling through its action. Wario may have fought harder, but Waluigi fought smarter. He let Mario and Luigi wear down Wario's energy at the beginning, and when they could no longer fight for the time being, Waluigi stepped in to further wear down Wario's energy, but also distract him long enough for Mario and Luigi to heal and recuperate from round 1. I said before that this web show is video game characters and logistics in the real world. I was not joking, because many multiplayer games have moments where a player might need to take a step back to heal. My favorite example is in the South Park episode Make Love, Not Warcraft. Speaking of video games, I should also note that Wario was the final boss in the handheld game Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins, where he made his debut on the Game Boy. In said handheld game, the final boss, Wario, was also in 3 phases, and Wario utilized familiar power-ups. In the case of Super Mario Bros., these familiar power-ups, in this case, are lightsabers and fireballs. Not sure if this was intentional on Richie's part, but it wouldn't surprise me if that game did in some part influence or inspire the fight. When the Mario brothers healed and recuperated enough, they successfully overwhelmed Wario. That's what I really love about this fight, because it required strategic thinking above and beyond the call of duty to defeat someone like Wario, who by this time has shown that not only he can give them a run for their money in terms of power and strength, but also outsmarted Solid Snake, Otacon, and Ash Ketchum. Moreover, it wasn't just simply brain over brawn. Waluigi did show brain, but he also had to utilize brawn in the process, not just his own, but also Mario's and Luigi's respectively. None of the previous fights relied on brain utilizing brawn, at least I would argue nowhere near to the extent we see in episode 44, and that in part highlights why it surpasses the first 2 season finale fights. Add all that to the fact that it effectively furthered the story through action. With Wario now turned from bad guy to borderline anti-hero, we reach the end of this special. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun to analyze the web series, albeit from a different approach than last time. This is Kevin Chamberlain. Thank you for watching.